So, anybody who hates God and hates anybody talking about the true history of America, which was with the founding of God, you'll want to scroll on by. This will just upset you, to know the true history. So, it is no exaggeration to say that on Sundays in Washington, during the administrations of Thomas Jefferson and James Madison, the state became the church. Within a year of his inauguration, Jefferson began attending church services in the House of Representatives. Madison followed Jefferson's example, although unlike Jefferson, who rode on horseback to church in the Capitol, Madison came in coach and four. Worship services in the house, a practice that continued until after the Civil War, were acceptable to Jefferson because they were non-discriminatory and voluntary. Preachers of every Protestant denomination appeared. Catholic priests began officiating in 1826. As early as January 1806, a female evangelist, Dorothy Ripley, delivered a camp meeting-style exhortation in the house to Jefferson. Throughout his administration, Jefferson permitted church services in executive branch buildings. The gospel was also preached in the Supreme Court chambers. I know, it's just can't stand it. And the whole wall of separation of church and state, that's been all misconstrued. But I don't want to push anybody off the ledge, with that. Just saying. Anyway, this is basically what I'm showing here is some pictures depicting from the government website the history of how it was important how much God was present with government. Yes. And given that it was in many different chambers, you could see the Capitol and all the Supreme Court, all these places as sanctuaries because they were used for church services. So then what would wicked people want to do? What would swampy people want to do? Oh, well, they'd want to go into that sanctuary and have sex in it, wouldn't they? Yeah. This is from the government website, too. Also, for the same site where I was reading in my last video. This is like, I know it's hard to see, but it's like prophetic periods because of revival taking place and people, getting back to what the founders who originally came, the ones that came in sometime in 1600, what they knew, and that was that to have freedom, God has to be governing. It doesn't mean you have no government. It means, though, that the two have to go hand in hand. Yeah, that's why I said if you're liberal, you won't like this. America has been so dumbed down. It's embarrassing, actually. I mean, you read what these people say and it makes total sense. But then, but look at the hateful people that hate God, that hate America, that want to they've dumbed us so down that people still want to argue about race. This was William Penn. He was a Quaker. Yes, he wasn't the very first people that stepped on Plymouth, but he came shortly after them. Much of the Constitution of 1776 was written based on his Constitution, which was called the Great Law of Pennsylvania. Yes, and this is his quote, probably the most important quote ever. Those people who will not be governed by God will be ruled by tyrants. Absolutely. They knew. They knew what they were fleeing. They knew that God had to be the centerpiece. In fact, a little bit more about him. He had wrote a letter to the people that were already here, it was right before he came here, and he said, "For you are now fixed at the mercy of no governor that comes to make his fortune great. You shall be governed by laws of your own making and live a free and, if you will, a sober and industrious life. I shall not usurp the right of any." This summarized his philosophy. King Charles of England had given Penn the native Indians' land, and he didn't feel that it was his to give to him. So he went to the native Indians and he paid for the land, and they made a treaty, and that treaty was signed in 1682, and it was called Shackamaxon Treaty. Yes. So much of his ideas, because he did bring prosperity to Pennsylvania, and he believed in humane, like people that did have to go to jail, and that, you know, they should be taught a trade while they're in there, not treated inhumanely. Much of that went into then what we know as the 1776 Constitution. Yes, 1876. So in the center is Richard Allen, founder of the African Methodist Episcopal Church, surrounded by 10 bishops of the church. At the upper left and right corners are pictures of Wilberforce University and Payne Institute. Other scenes in the life of the church are depicted, including the sending of missionaries to Haiti in 1824. So yes, we hear nothing except about slavery, except white leaders of the church and blacks. They brought, in that first timeline I showed, they were responsible for bringing revival by getting the people to realize that, no, this is important to the government. The two are, if you want freedom, though, it's all in the Bible. That's why. Yeah. So do these look like enslaved people? I'm not saying people weren't enslaved, but everybody's been enslaved. They've just dumped people down with this race narrative. These look like men that had brought great things to America because they knew the truth, unlike all the professors in universities today who have just taught falsities. And the Holy Experiment, I forgot to mention William Penn. His first, the Great Law Constitution in 1680 something, that he came shortly after the original founders in the 1680 something like that. It was his experiment, the Holy Experiment, of many different Christian faiths. Whether it's he was a Quaker, whether it's the Puritans, all these different Christian faiths being able to live under one umbrella. Yes, many people say that failed after he died. So, but our founders are these founders. It's just we've only been taught about the 1776 Constitution, yet much of that was based on the Holy Experiment. And this is the Tree of Life. This is a painting that it was on the same. All of these are from the government website regarding the history of America and religion. And what this says is the evangelical spirit was embodied in men like John Haggerty, 1747, a Methodist preacher who established himself as a Baltimore printer publisher. He published prints depicting the Tree of Life, a Tree of Virtue, and Tree of Vices. So a large crowd strolls by the narrow gate of salvation along the broad road. The broad road. I bring that up all the time. It talks about it in the Bible. You don't want to be on the broad road. A large crowd strolls by the narrow gate of salvation along the broad road, way of the devil and Babylon, mother of harlots. The secure sinners are stigmatized with labels indicating pride, chambering, wantonness, quackery, and extortion. Also, there was another picture on there, but when I clicked on it, it wouldn't pull it up, but I'll at least read what was next to the picture. It basically just showed Adam and Eve living in harmony, and it said it's called 1,000 Years. Timelines that traced sacred history from Adam and Eve to contemporary times were a popular form of religious art in early periods of American history. The one seen here, and I don't have it, prepared by well-known engraver Amos Doolittle, states that in the 1800 Americans entered a fourth period in which Satan would be bound for 1,000 years and the church would be in a happy state. So, yeah, even though everybody will tell you in the media is lied and they want to believe whatever their experts say, the truth is, the founders, even 1776, they all knew that there is no freedom without God being at the top of it all. Does he implement rulers and governors? Yes. But given where we're at today, I think that even if you hate God, maybe if you want freedom, you should recognize that you can't have it without him.